Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our LinkedIn Live. My name is Brandon Mills, Talent Development Specialist here at Gallup. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting today's session. Today's session is focused on how to be a more authentic leader using your strengths. I'm joined with Austin Sullen-Trump, who is our Product Max Portfolio Manager, and he'll be chatting with us today on what it looks like to be a more authentic leader. Austin, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brandon. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And as we're waiting for a few people to join, feel free
Yeah.
to throw your top five in the chat and where you're located as well. I'd love to just see where you guys are joining in from. Now, I also like to throw this question out for everyone to answer as well. What strength are you leading with right now? Austin, I'd love to ask you this question as well. And if you don't mind sharing your top five, what strength are you leading with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my top five are communication, activator, futuristic, belief, and positivity. I'm gonna dip.
Nice.
I'm gonna dip down into my top 10, and I'd say today is a day full of adaptability for me. So
Nice. I love to
adaptability is
hear
top
that.
10 for me. Got a lot of things going on, a lot of different moving pieces, and whenever that comes in play in my life, my adaptability serves me well in being able to sort of be in the moment, enjoy where I am, sort of relish in the moment, and jump from one thing to the next and sort of keep all the balls in the air. So it's my adaptability is really what I'm leading with today.
Also, I have to piggyback off of what you're saying there too. I have adaptability pretty high too. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving things right now with us being in like Q4. So I feel like I'm hopping back and forth with a whole lot of different things as well. So I
Yeah.
love that you say that. I would have to agree.
Awesome.
Well, Austin, for those who don't know you, I'd love for you to
Mhm.
just tell us a little bit more information about yourself. Tell us about your role and all
Yeah.
that great information.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, as you said, my role, I'm our CliftonStrengths portfolio manager here at Gallup, which really means I get the pleasure of sort of leading a team cross functionally that sort of drives our strategy for everything we do around CliftonStrengths. So, if you think about product development, technology, research, learning, client work, everything we do around CliftonStrengths, I'm part of the team that sort of helps drive us forward. So, really excited. I love this kind of stuff, being able to interact with our community and share my perspective on strengths a little bit. My background before I was in this role, I was a consultant with Gallup where I
Mm,
traveled and taught our courses. I'm a ICF certified coach as well. And I spent about almost 10 years as a client of Gallup's working with strengths and implementing strengths in my organization before I joined Gallup. So, been a practitioner for a long time.
awesome. And, Austin, I do have to tell this quick story. I think you were actually one of the first people I met when I first got to Gallup.
Yeah,
And the way you were talking about strengths, I was like, man, like I gotta get there. And it's kind of funny to see this is like full circle now.
for
Now we're
sure.
having this conversation. So that's
For
awesome.
sure.
And the way you just described it too, I love how you're talking about like a lot of the things that you manage. So one of the things I'd love for you to do is kind of just talk about what would you define authentic leadership
Mm.
and why is it important to be an authentic leader? And for
Yeah.
those people who are just joining in now too, I'd love for you guys to throw in your top five while Austin's explaining a lot of this information.
Yeah, so this idea of authentic leadership, it's something I've always been sort of fascinated by because if I like to think of it sometimes as well, if you're not an authentic leader, what kind of leader are you?
Mm,
Right? Like to me, authentic leadership is really the only kind of leadership that works. That if I'm not being authentic, I'm in some sense I'm trying to replicate somebody else's or what somebody else is expecting me to
mm,
do. And so in my life's experience, I think that this idea of leading people, of what is it that people are looking for and how do I become an effective leader? That's where it begins. And that I'm trying to get people to buy in, to be excited about the things I'm excited about, and to try to push us in a direction that I think is going to help better our cause and help us get where we're trying to go organizationally. And that to do that, the only way I know to lead others is to be honest and open and vulnerable. And that's what authenticity is to me. Here's what I care about, here's what I don't care about. Here's where I'm going to be, unwavering, and here's where, I'm really flexible and don't care how it gets done.
mm.
And being able to be able to sort of communicate clearly with others on, being a part of my team, being a part of this group, here's what you can expect from me. And that part of that, Brandon, is that I'm an open book. part of that is also I'm going to wear my emotions on my sleeve. Right? We were talking beforehand. Crazy day, a lot of things going on. If you're working with me and you're part of the team I'm on, listen, you're going to hear about my day, and I want to hear about yours because I think it's sort of part of that reality of work and life is being able to be authentic about the goods, the bads, the uglies, and that I think that builds better bonds and better relationships that enable me to be a more effective leader.
I love that because it's almost like being transparent, right? Like you
Yeah.
want to make sure that people are getting that authentic self of who you are, and you're actually showcasing that to a lot of like those associates as a part
Yeah.
of being a leader.
Well, and to that point, by being transparent and for me, that's like a value I hold dear. And again, I told you earlier, like belief is high for me, right? So I'm very
Mhm.
clear with my values and I'm very clear with sharing them. It's also it makes it much easier for the people I work with and the people I lead to know how they can best help. Like
Mm.
how do they best fit? Because because of this sort of comfort I have with being honest and open and authentic, that doesn't just mean that they know where I'm great. That means they know where I struggle, and that as their leader, they can say, "Well, Austin, look, I don't need to ask you for this. I can help with that. Like I can be the person to step in and fill that role." So it gives them a clearer understanding of roles they can play that can help the team and help the organization move forward.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that, we're talking about authentic leaders because you actually just wrote an article about authentic leadership. So, Austin, do you
Yeah.
mind talking a little bit about like what you wrote in that article?
Yeah, sure. It's always fun. I love writing, and it's funny because when I write, I don't sit down with a Word document and start typing. What I do is I talk. I tell stories. I think about the topic at hand and what examples from my life make sense. And I partner with a writer to help me turn it into a really well-crafted article.
Yeah.
That's my approach. It's my style. And so when I started thinking about authentic leadership, I went back to early in my career, feedback I'd received and great leaders I'd worked with and not so great leaders I'd worked with and all my experiences. And it was really clear that for me, leadership was something I was talking about when I was in the second grade. Like it began for me. My dad was an executive and he was a well respected leader, both in his professional life as well as in his community and in among his family. That he came home from work, and I'm so excited every day to see him come home from work when I was in grade school. Almost every day he asked me the same question. He said, "Austin, what did you do to be a leader today?"
Mhm.
And so, like that question, when you have that question posed to you over and over again, especially as a child, it frames leadership as something that you can do. Like there's
Mm.
action oriented to being a leader, and I can choose to do it or not,
Yeah,
right? But
absolutely.
also, it was reinforced as it is important. Like leadership is important, and so among my early formative years, that became the lens that I saw everything through. Was
Mhm.
every relationship, I've got to be the leader. Every team, I've got to be the captain. Every project, I've got to be the one leading the charge. And so it's not coincidental that as an adult, I work in leadership development, right? Like that, there's not a like that's something that comes from that.
Yeah.
And so the authentic leadership journey for me was admiring leaders who were really good that I admired that I was like, wow, I wish I could do that and sort of experiencing and experimenting of, well, if I try to do it their way, it had moderate success sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
um, I thought about, I cite an example in the story, in the article, a story about speeches that, in high school and grade school and high school through college, like I had a lot of organizations and opportunities. I was, student council president and all that sort of stuff where I'd give speeches.
Yeah.
And I would like think about, all right, what are the speeches that really move me? Who are the leaders that when they give speeches, I get hooked on them. And so I
Mhm.
started trying to copy like their template, if you will. And what I realized was that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Like sitting down and writing a speech with like a very structured, approach didn't work for me. What worked was when I got up and I spoke from the heart, and I just said what was on my mind, and I was again that authenticity that we talk about, that
Mhm.
candor and that transparency. Well, the reason I'm so passionate about it is because I've seen it work for me since 1995. Like it's just
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
been part of like as early on as when I was a grade school kid and a teenager, that's when it started to have success for me, was realizing, wow, authenticity is my path. Candor, transparency, don't hold back. Tell them the truth. That's what works for me. And so I talk about in the article a little bit about, what is it that you're looking for? What's your path? Or are you trying to do it the way somebody else did it? Or have you
Mhm.
figured out that you know what? Your way of being a leader might be different. And you got to feel comfortable and free to figure out what that looks like. And obviously, strengths are that path, right? Of
Absolutely.
understanding what it is that we do well and put a language to it. I think that's the path.
Yeah, so and one thing that really just stood out to me when you're saying this, right? So it really was this focus on how you can be unique and how you
Mhm.
can show through your uniqueness through leadership, right?
Yeah,
And so one thing that you said, it was my favorite thing you said in your article too, and
yeah.
I'm gonna steal this. I'm gonna say this to some other people too, Austin.
That's
But
why
you
I write.
say, but you said leadership isn't one size fits all, and you'll become the best leader you can be when you find out what uniquely makes you powerful. What
Mhm.
does that really mean? Do you mind touching base on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So I think in a world where people are aspiring to do better and to make an impact,
Mhm.
it can oftentimes, um, there's a lot of books written and content out there of, the 10 tips to being a better leader and five things that great leaders do. And look, I don't read a lot, but I've read a lot of those books, and
Yeah.
I've listened to the TED Talks. And look, that's great. If you can find tips and tricks from other people, wonderful. But the ultimate truth is that all of those things become transactional and sort of operational things if you don't fundamentally believe in them and connect with them so that they become part of who you are.
Mm.
The easiest way to become a leader that is sustainable, and this is where I think the connection comes, is understanding what it is you instinctively do well to begin with and how that applies to leading, inspiring, motivating other people. Look, that's the renewable energy source. Like,
Mm.
that's the thing
Yep.
that's not going to wane over time. So your source of power comes from connecting who you authentically are with what needs to get done.
Yep.
And I think that oftentimes, especially in aspiring leaders, that's a struggle to feel like, wait, my way of connecting may be different than how the other leaders in my organization are. Well, understanding that the only way you're going to be able to connect and maintain that over time is to do it your way.
Yep.
And that part, I think the other aspect of it is, part of leadership is role modeling. Like, part of leadership is eyes are always on you. People are looking to see how you handle situations, how you respond, the tone you set. And so being able to set a tone for whether it be a family, a small business, an organization, a school, whatever group you're leading, a team, being able to set the role model and set the example that we're going to be honest, transparent, and authentic to who we are first and foremost. That's what matters the most.
Mhm.
That is going to open your team members up to feel the same way, to find their voice, to find the way they can make an impact. Whether that is as a leader or not, is not the point. What matters is that you're helping others see and be empowered through your actions.
Absolutely. And I think when looking at that, right, I think a big thing that plays into that piece is discovering your strengths, right? So, I would love to for you to just talk a little bit about like how can you be a more authentic leader by using those strengths, by
Yeah.
understanding what your strengths are.
Yeah. So if I think it's connecting for the people with which you work, whether it be the teammates, your peers, whatever it may be, connecting with them. What is driving the actions you're taking? So I
Mm.
think oftentimes, because leaders are so visible, their team will simply observe action and they can assume why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? But being able to help sort of connect the dots and validate, hey, look, I'm doing this because I'm trying, is it a thinking theme that's driving me to think about strategy, and I'm thinking through all the options and I'm thinking through all of the potential pitfalls,
Hmm.
or is it an action theme, an executing theme that is much more centered around, hey, we got to get something done right now. That the same behavior of making a decision in a meeting, of making the call that this is the path we're going to go for, making sure the people you lead understand, hey, I'm doing this because of X. So let me give you an example. I've got strategic number 6, adaptability number 9, but I got activator number 2,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So the way that oftentimes plays out in a team conversation is, look, I can see 30 different directions we could go. I'm very comfortable with the fact that there's a lot of ways we can go forward with a plan. I'm also really comfortable knowing that the path we choose right now may not be the best one, but I'm willing to go there, try it, and adjust course later.
Yeah.
That's sort of my default setting. So making sure my people understand that when I'm leading them and that when I'm making a decision or I'm giving my sort of support behind a decision, hey, I'm not saying the other choices aren't valid. I'm not saying that there aren't other ways we could go. I'm saying as the leader, I'm going to push us to take action today. Let's try this path. And I'm willing to put my name behind it. But in 2 weeks, if it's not working, we can go this other path. And
Yeah.
helping them understand that's what's driving my decision, not that impatience in the moment or decision that this is the one and only way we can do it. Helping them connect that the behavior they're seeing from me, how it's connected to my strengths and my hardwiring,
Yeah.
helps, I think, them to feel more like, okay, I get it. I see the decision making. So I should and can feel more empowered to make similar decisions and similar approaches in my own life.
Yeah, and I love this idea of you're kind of centering this around of like strength-based teams, right? And
Yeah.
building strength-based teams. And you also actually linking back to, going back to your article, you talked about
Yeah.
this a little bit. So when talking about like understanding what your teammates or your
Mm,
department's strengths are, what does that really look like when you're formulating that from a leadership perspective?
yeah. So I think the way I oftentimes think about this as a leader, I'm not trying to build a well-rounded, evenly balanced team of complementary strengths that I have every theme filled and I have every domain equally balanced. Like that's not my goal.
Hmm.
My goal as a leader is to create a high functioning team that we get stuff done, we're productive, we're efficient, we're effective,
I
right?
love that.
So to me, the shortest route to get there is creating strengths fluency among the team. So I care less about what the strengths are of my team and more, do we know what our strengths are and what the strengths of our teammates are so we know when to lean in and lean out.
Yep.
That to me is the most important thing. And so the only way I know as an authentic version of me to do that is to be honest about what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing, and then asking my teammates to lean in certain times and why I'm asking them. So being able to say, hey, I think you can really help us here, and here's why. The
Mhm.
team needs you right now. Right. And being able to hopefully instill confidence in them that the reason we need them is because they are the best on the team to help us with this. They're uniquely set up for success in this
Yeah.
situation. So it becomes less of a game. They're trying to search for some certain formula, and
Yep.
it becomes more about helping people feel that they understand who they are, why they're on this team, and how they can help.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I love the way you're formulating, saying like you're leaning into those strengths that people may not have, and
Mhm.
you're actually filling in those gaps, right? So
Right.
when looking at it, when being an authentic leader, right?
Mhm.
What advice would you give a leader who's just discovered their strengths and they don't really know how to navigate with all this information?
um, be comfortable saying that.
Mm,
First step is being comfortable saying, is letting your team know, hey, I'm learning something new here. I'm trying a different way of approaching this. I'm trying to learn more about my strengths and learn more about your strengths, but I don't have it all figured out yet. Like that action right there of being able to acknowledge to a team that you are taking action to improve how you do as a leader, but you don't have it all figured out quite yet is a remarkably powerful conversation, right? I think part of what burns leaders out over time is a sense that they're supposed to have all the answers and have it all figured out and be the one that can always fix every situation. And that realistically is an unfair barometer for anybody for any human being who is flawed and made up of these brilliant strengths, but also gaps in talent and weaknesses that come from it.
Yeah.
I think that being able to, for a new leader or a leader who is starting out their strengths journey, being able to really acknowledge what you're trying to do and where you are in your journey will go a long way.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. That's a great way to like think about it. And
Mm.
one of the things I was thinking about as well, so as I was reading through like, the article you wrote, you started to talk about like when leaders start to lean into understanding what their strengths are
Mhm.
and what those employee strengths are too. There's some benefits that come with it, like, engagement,
Mhm.
retention. I was thinking, do you mind talking a little bit more about like what comes with understanding strengths a little bit more when being a leader?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, one of the things I love about being a part of the team at Gallup is everything we do is grounded in science and research. So yeah, there's some philosophical stuff here that makes sense and can
Yes.
feel good. But we've got the evidence to back up that look, when people get to do what they do best, like they're more engaged at work. My favorite stat is they're 6 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life.
Mhm.
What the heck does that mean? It means they're happier.
Yeah.
They're carrying less stress with them home from the workday. Like at the end, if you believe as a leader that your responsibility is in any way to the people you lead, and you find a thing, an approach that can help them have a better quality of life, why would you not want to explore it further? Like that's where I'm telling you, that's where I was first introduced to strengths. Was I was working with engagement and culture inside my organization, and strengths was we talked about it as an accelerant to engagement. Like if you're building that kind of environment, man, you understand people's strengths and you get there faster, right?
Hmm.
I will say at the core of all of it, whether it be engagement or leadership or management or whatever angle you want to take on work getting done, it comes down to human beings interacting with other human beings with trust at the center.
Mm.
Like, do I trust the person I'm talking to? Do I believe that they have like positive intent? Or am I skeptical of everything they say because I've been burned before? Right. And at the center of trust, it's a relationship between people. And to me, I know my formula of how I build trust, right? And I've talked about it. It's this candor, it's this openness, it's sharing, it's asking, it's genuinely caring, right?
Mhm.
But I also know other people have different formulas on how they build trust. Things matter more to others than they do, and that's fine. That's great. The only way you know that is by asking them and talking about it. And
Mhm.
how would you like the path through a strengths-based relationship where I know the better questions to ask you versus Jim, like that our hard wiring is going to open us up to want to talk about different kinds of things and to be more receptive to certain questions than others. That's where, as a leader, my strengths fluency of myself and of my team is so critical because it sets me up to build trust quicker and maintain it more effectively with people over time.
And that makes complete sense. I love the way you frame that. So I guess Austin, how can you discover your own authentic leadership style?
So if you think about leadership from sort of um, the role and then a favorite. Oh God, I'm gonna get teary eyed thinking about this. Kurt Liesfeld was a mentor of mine, and for any avid strengths users out there, strengths coaches out there listening, you've seen Kurt's work, you know Kurt. If the leadership is the role, I'm a leader, connecting it to your soul, and that's where your strengths come in. The more you can connect the two aspects, who you are in your soul, the core of your being, your hardwiring to the role you play, that is a bridge gapped by strengths. That understanding that is really sort of central to discovering your strengths, which we have the assessment you can take, engaging in a conversation with a coach or somebody who is sort of who understands strengths enough to help you make sense of it. We have tremendous tools and resources that are designed to help make sense of your talents and your strengths. To me, that's where it comes. Is I know as a leader with high communication and high positivity that I can naturally and comfortably do a really good job of getting people excited about where we're going. And it doesn't take a lot of effort for me.
Hmm.
I've got peers who are tremendous sort of thinking and tactical executionary leaders who have mapped out plans and visions and strategies for things, but they aren't comfortable standing up in front of the group and sharing their vision, right? And that understanding I need to lean on people who can help me create the concrete plan so that I can go share it with comfort and excellence. Likewise, they need people who can help them share the brilliant vision they've created.
Yeah.
And that to me, that all comes from understanding the language of strengths.
I love how way perfectly you just like frame that up, and understanding that there's this own way of discovering how you can become that authentic by learning a little bit more how to utilize your strengths.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now we actually have a question here from Jim Collinson, who's actually producing this today. Jim had asked Austin, how would you know your goal of authentic leadership is being met? What
Mhm.
are the signs you see in yourself and maybe others?
That's a great question. Um, so for me, how do I know my goal of being authentic as a leader is being met? It comes from the relationships I'm building with my team and the kinds of things we're talking about. If the conversation I have with my team members is only work related, if there's never sort of the foray into emotional components of the work, how it's making them feel, their apprehensions, their concerns, their fears, their excitements, their joys, all those things. If that's not coming up, if it's super tactical in nature and we live in that tactics only, I'm missing the gap in my authentic connection with them.
Mhm.
So I know it's being met when I have members of my team asking me for time to talk about something outside of the office. I just had the other day, I had a conversation with a team member, and they said, listen, we're gonna put work aside for 10 minutes. I need to talk through this issue I'm having. And when those things are happening more, that's a sign to me that I'm connecting with them authentically because they know I care. And they know I don't consider anything out of bounds. Right. So I think that's to me a sign I'm looking for. And then conversely, I feel the relationship is built with them where it's authentic enough that if I find myself wanting to share things with them. So if I find myself compelled when something great happens with my kids, for example, right? I got 3 daughters. When one of them has a really cool moment on the softball field or the volleyball court, and I find myself compelled to send a text to a teammate or a team member, like that's a sign to me that I've built that. All right, my leadership is working here. That I'm feeling this two-way relationship with this person. That I want them to know about what's happening in my life and with my kids' lives, right? And so I think that to me is a sign for me that things are working when the conversations are broader than just work.
Awesome. Well, Austin, thank you so much for your time today on a lot of this great information on how to be a more authentic leader by using your strengths. For all our listeners out there, if you're interested in more of this content, check out our Clifton Strengths podcast page on any of the available apps. Feel free to check out our YouTube channel as well. And if you aren't following the Clifton Strengths here on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. Austin, once again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you all soon.
My absolute pleasure. Take care.